How's it going, everybody? And welcome back. So, I'm going to address the obvious thing in front of you at the moment, the glasses. Yes, I do wear readers now, and you know what? It's all good. It's helped quite a bit. I don't deal with the pretty consistent headaches that I used to deal with eye strain and having to like squint and having to zoom in and zoom out and stuff like that. It's helped quite a bit. Definitely, it's more of I can still read things for the most part, but they're slightly out of focus, and then the glasses just bring everything into focus. It's like watching standard definition and then watching HD, and you're like, ooh, that's different. So it's cool. I enjoy it. I like it. I wear them quite a bit now. I've got to the point where I'm kind of uncomfortable. Although, as long as I'm stationary, if I'm moving around, like they're not meant as full-time glasses, but they're cool. I like them. So my wife tells me I look more distinguished, I think is the word she said. Anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about the CCNP Service Provider Core exam that I took on Monday the 12th. I will talk a little bit about the exam experience and what that was like. This is the second time I'm recording this video because I felt like I was trying to give some a feel of how the exam went, and I feel like I went too far, and I might have violated NDA, so that video has been deleted. So I'm gonna not go to that level of detail, but so anyway, let's get into it. So I took the exam at home through OnView, and I had a schedule for 9:45 Monday morning, and so you have to go through the rigmarole of disconnecting your monitors, because I run 3 of them. I've got the one the monitor that's right in front of me that the camera sits on, and then 2 other ones, and stuff like that. So I logged in and went through the whole process where you've got to take your pictures and all that type of stuff. And then I took it a step before I even got to that point, when I tried to go access the exam itself, and you go to view.com and you log in and you look up for your upcoming appointments, it's not obvious where to go. So it was like I was looking at it, said view, cancel, reschedule. I'm like, okay, where's the launch? So that's what I was looking for, because I think that's how it was before. So I went ahead and I was clicking around, and finally I just clicked on view, and it popped up. Oh, that's not so obvious. So I did that. It finally launched the exam, pulls you into the OnView secure browser, and then when I got through the process of taking all my pictures and submitting them, when I got through with that, then I get put in like the queue, and it said 126 in line, and I was like, what? Holy crap. So that was at 9:46, 47, something like that. So 126 people were ahead of me in line. So now at this point here, I've got the camera on me nonstop, and it says recording. So I'm like, oh crap, like I can't move now, so I'm stuck until this is ready. So I literally just sat here doing whatever, moving around, whatever you do when you're waiting for a proctor to pop in, because what I didn't want to do is risk getting up and say going to the bathroom. And so I sat there, and about half an hour, because I sat there for 45 minutes. By the time I got to the point where the number was dwindling down to just a couple of people in front of me, I had to go pee. Like at that point, if I could have gotten up and walked out of my office and gone to the bathroom and came back, I probably would have been okay. Nope, because the exam is $400, so I wasn't about to go, but then again, it's like I have to go pee. So this is for comic relief for everybody. So anyway, the exam starts, or the proctor hops in, says you're next in line. So I don't know how all of you feel, but when I got down to the last 2 or 3 people, the anxiety kicks in and the nervousness kicks in. Even though I've taken several exams, and this is not my first rodeo, I still got nervous. And So I'm sitting there and I'm like trying to like calm myself down, breathing in, breathing out, and trying to like go feng shui and hum and wusa and all that stuff that you see on TV. None of it was working. So because I knew as soon as I got into the exam, it would be game on, and then cause it's just the couple of minutes leading up to that were like, and I get the same feeling right before change window. Like my palms get sweaty, that type of stuff, and I kind of want to reference Eminem where it's my knees get weak or my palms are sweaty. Not the vomit on my. I'm screwing it up, but so anyway, the proctor popped in, and she was trying to explain to me what was going on because my audio wasn't working. So the mic, I have to. It's like redlined at the moment. Anyway, there we go. So the mic wasn't working. So they couldn't hear me. So they called me and they wanted to verify the monitors. So I verified the monitors, and then they wanted me to show around the room like they normally do, which is like, why take the pictures to begin with? That to me doesn't make any sense. If the proctor's going to make you take the camera and spin it around the room anyway, why take the pictures? Anyway. That to me it makes no sense. It's counterproductive if you ask me. The pictures are like, verify who you are, but then if they're gonna make you spin the room, take the camera up and spin around the room anyway, just eliminate the need to take the pictures. But anyway, I have never once taken an on-view exam and not had the proctor pop in and spin the room. They always do it. I think it's part of their SOP, even though you take pictures and all that stuff. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that situation. I think in the future, I don't think I'm going to take any more exams at home. I think I'm going to go to my local tech college, and I'm going to take my exams there. I'll get out of the house, go take my exam at the college that I used to attend, and I'll just go to the Pearson View Testing Center there, so I don't have to deal with the fact of having to wait for 120 other people to go through. So this is like probably the first time where the exam experience was kind of crap in my perspective. So the exam launched because my audio wasn't working. They had to call me, so they called me, and I answered the phone, and we went through the process, and then so both of my monitors were unplugged, right, and the power cords were dangling and draped over the top of the monitors. When she released the exam, and what ended up happening was I got this little pop-up where only one monitor can be used at a time, and I'm like, well, that's all that's there. And so ironically, she was like, well, I may have to reschedule this. I said, so I'm trying to type quickly here. I'm like, let me just yank the HDMI cables. So I yanked the HDMI cables out of my two other monitors, and then she tried to release it again, and when she did, that's when it worked. It's like no power to the monitors, but the network or the video card, my RTX 2060, I think is what I've got in here, it still detected the monitors. So I pulled the HDMI cables out of each one of the monitors, and then she tried to release it again, and this time it worked. It's like the software won't let you do it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, so it does a software check to make sure everything is working the way it is expected. So for some reason, I don't know how, let me pull this up real quick. For Christmas last year, my oldest son got me a Razer gaming mouse, and I believe I also have a Razer gaming keyboard. Yes, I have a Razer gaming keyboard. It's a mechanical keyboard. That's what he got me for Christmas. So I use it religiously. I like Razer's products. That's what he uses, is Razer. Anyway, so as I'm going through in this process of trying to get this exam started, it keeps telling me that the Razer game manager, a couple of those specific Razer applications were running. So I go ahead and I just disable, I turn them off through Task Manager, thinking I got everything. I hadn't. So I'm like, what the heck? So I ended up uninstalling all the Razer software on my computer, which I was like, really? What does that have to do with anything? But anyway, I'm like, to me, I try to maintain a high level of integrity, and try not to BS anyone. So it's like, okay, fine. I don't use the software anyway, so it doesn't really benefit me. It, saves the room on my computer. So anyway, I got that taken care of. Finally lets me through, and my exam is released. And some things are a little out of order with the actual flow of the day, but anyway, you get the point. So I ended up doing that. The exam releases, and you go through your little your tutorial and how the exam engine is going to work. And then you go through, are you 18? You accept the license agreement, all that other garbage that Cisco makes you jump through the hoops on. So I go through all of that, and finally the exam releases. And so, like I said, the first couple questions were pretty basic, nothing to raise a heartbeat on. They were, full screen width of text for the question, and you read the answer. You're like, oh, well, that's this. So everybody asked me the same question: how hard was the exam? And my opinion on that is the exam will be difficult depending on how much effort and time you've put into studying for it. And what I mean by that is, if you are brand new to the track and you don't have any real world experience with any of the technologies that are on it, and all you've done is read documentation, maybe you've labbed a few things here or there up, you are moving from your CCNA into your CCNP on the topics, you are going to struggle a lot and likely fail. However, if you are coming from a background of you've put a ton of time and effort into labbing up all the technologies that you can, you've read the documentation, you've watched a bunch of different video series, you've put in the requisite amount of time needed to have a general idea of what's going on and on the blueprint, and I'll talk about the blueprint here in just a minute. You're probably going to have more success in taking the exam. You'll find things you'll know and understand more. That's definitely going to be something that I highly recommend everybody put in the required amount of time, and that's going to be different for everybody, right? Now, I'll be a realistic person here and say that I probably find it easier to take exams than somebody with the amount of time I've got in the industry. Having a CCIE, it helps, right? There's a lot of things that aren't going to be as difficult for me as they would be if somebody was coming from the CCNA working at their CCNP. I didn't have the amount of experience that I do, hadn't put in the amount of effort into the technologies that I have. So and the other thing is, a lot of people ask me what it is that I use for going through and learning the technologies. And the answer to that question is as much as I can. I will look at resources across the internet that are all, whether they are paid to view or they are free to view or free to read or paid to read, whatever. I have an O'Reilly subscription, so I pay $40 or $50 a month for O'Reilly access to Cisco Press documentation. I spend money, so you have to spend money to make money. So I have spent money on the books. I've spent money on the video series. So you have to invest in yourself first and foremost. And I obviously have invested in a lab to be able to do the stuff that I do. And as time has gone on, that lab has grown. I've gotten more and more comfortable with it. I can do a lot with it. So, and that benefits me in my day-to-day job. I'm able to lab things up and provide the configuration that's needed in order for something to work. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into play that you are going to have to just put time and effort into. I definitely would say that this exam is a good test of somebody that's trying to go after their CCIE and service provider. However, there's a lot of stuff on it that sometimes you won't be able to lab out. For example, anything DNA center, unless you have a physical way of doing it. I can't test it out. I have a general idea of how DNA center works. The thing is, I don't deal with it at all. I don't touch it. So I know very little about it, other than the fact that You've got, a couple devices. It uses Catalyst 9K, Catalyst 8K devices, and you've got DNA Center integrated, or ICE, Identity Services Engine. So there's a lot of that type of stuff that comes into play. Or you've got Network Services Orchestrator, I think is what NSO. So there's definitely some stuff on the exam that you're going to get tested on that is going to be outside of the purview of routing and switching and MPLS. There's still going to be a lot of MPLS and a lot of routing and switching in the exam, because that's the core competency of the exam is networking and MPLS. But there's going to be other stuff that you're going to have to answer. There's going to be architecture questions that you're going to have to answer. And my best advice to anybody that's going after this exam is to read and understand the blueprint. So I'm actually going to switch gears here and jump over here to this guy here. So this is the blueprint that you're going to want to learn. So I'm going to go ahead and expand all of this, and I'm not going to go into each one of these and break down what they are, because it would be here for hours. But I will definitely say that if you don't put in the time to understand how all the architecture works, how all the networking works, all of the MPLS and segment routing, all of the services, and all of the automation and insurance, if you don't put in the time and effort to learn these things thoroughly, then the exam itself is going to be much more difficult for you than it would be for somebody that has put in the time and actually labbed this stuff up. And I always will specify lab. If you can lab it, lab it. Don't sit there and just read the documentation and be like, okay, I got it. You might understand it from a theoretical perspective, but it's a whole nother animal when you are put on the CLI and you're trying to configure multicast VPN profile 0. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's going to be where you're using GRE tunnels to allow multicast VPNs at different remote sites to use the MPLS backbone to communicate with each other. So, the other thing I'll mention when it comes to resources, there are some really, really, really good resources out there for you to use. I don't have them pulled up at the moment, but let me pause real quick and pull up a couple. So if you have access to the internet, which if you're watching this video, you probably do, I would definitely recommend the CCIE Service Provider Ultimate Study Bundle. I know Nick. Known Nick for a long time. Nick's a super solid dude. And then I don't know, God, what are their names? I am going to butcher this. Piort and Peter and Lucas, I think are their names. I don't remember they're European of some descent. I don't know specifically which one, because I've never talked to either one of them. But I've met Nick. I've got this book. I bought this book when it first came out. I have spent a lot of time reading it. There's a lot of really good information in it. I'd say that if you're going to go, there's two books specifically you need to go after. The first one is core routing, right? Because on the exam blueprint, it talks a lot about networking. The first book is a Cisco Press book, and that is going to be IP routing on iOS, XE, and XR. Get that book, and then go through it for all of this. It's going to cover all of these things. The only one that you're going to want to spend some time on that is not covered in the book is going to be NAT. And they do spend a little bit of time in the exam talking about NAT, especially IPv6 transition, because that's a big deal, especially in the SP world. And doing things like 6RD and DS Lite. I've seen that a couple of times. So that's going to be something I would definitely look into. Once you have a core foundation understanding of how OSPF, EIGRP, OSPF, RIP, redistribution, route policies, there was one thing on the exam that really messed with me a lot, and it's only because of the fact that I have not touched them in a long time, was iOS XR route policy languages. They threw me for a loop. There were a handful of questions on the exam that had a emphasis on specific variables needed to be met. So they had, the topology might have been small, right? But the the specific requirements in the question were like, okay, we need this set of subnets or this supernet to be tagged with this BGP AS community and have this specific med value set. There were several variable requirements needed in the exam question, and then you get a list of text an output that you need to look at the config and go, okay, well, option B or option C would affect this config. Yeah, and that's an area I struggle with because it's been a long time since I've touched RPLs. And I'm like, I don't know. There's some of the questions I was like, I'm not sure. I said, but where it goes back to, and if some of the RPLs looked like they might do it, I would start looking at, okay, what are they matching on? Now, this is one thing that I don't like about taking the exam at home. And let me switch back over here to this scene here. One thing I don't like taking the exam at home is you're not allowed to have anything on your desk. So what I would have loved to have done, now I know when you take the exam at every Pearson VUE location that I've ever taken an exam at, they give you a piece of laminated paper with a marker so you can write things down. I'm a big fan of that because that probably would have saved my bacon. Even though I still passed the exam, that would have saved my bacon on the exam because I would have been able to draw it out. And that to me is a huge thing. If you can't draw it out, especially when you're trying to piece logic together and you're like, oh, how would I do that? It might pop to some people. It might just be like, they read the question, like, okay, that's what I need to do. Go through, nope, yep, right there. Boom. Next question. Some people are good like that. This guy's not. So, I went through, I struggled with that. And to me, it's not, and that's one of those things where I circle back to what I said just a few minutes ago. If you don't put in the time necessary for that particular area and that particular feature, you're going to struggle. And I did. I did not put in the time I needed to have a rock solid understanding of RPLs. I know basic RPLs. Like if I wanted to create an RPL that said pass and apply that to an eBGP peering, boom, I know. I know that my routes are going to be exchanged between eBGP peers. If I've got a couple of them and I want to do AS path prepending out this peering, I want to do any routes that I learned from this guy, I want to set a local preference of 250, and I want to set a med value or say a community value or trigger, the other provider to do something for traffic back into me. I know how to work with RPLs from that because they're similar when you keep them basic to a route map. But when you get into the weeds, it's when you're doing nested and you're doing the $ in the parentheses. That's the one that I've just never wrapped my head around it. It is what it is. So there are going to be capabilities that you're going to obviously struggle on, and that's just one of them for me. I'm being straight up with you. I'm not giving anything specific away, but that I know they're going to be on the exam, and those are the ones that cause me probably the most grief. I'd be sitting there reading through them because it's just a lot of config. Now, there are other questions that are going to have other config options as well. They're going to give you config outputs. Like they're going to say what configuration, the snippet will be an output of a router output. And then refer to the exhibit, what config is missing or needs to be added in order to make this config work. And it's like, now, if the questions and the lack of knowledge on those questions isn't bad enough, at this point in time, I was at question 50, I think. 52, something like that, if I remember correctly. Anyway, I am sitting there, and that feeling of having to go to the bathroom is only growing. Because I can't get up from the exam, right? I don't know if there's a way to type in there and be like, hey, I need to use the restroom for a minute. Can I leave? Because I do not want them to be like, oh, well, he's going to go check his notes, or whatever, and I don't want that. So I decided just to suck it up and deal with the pain. Well, let me tell you. By the time I got to the upper echelon in questions, I am at the point here where I can't take a full breath. That's how much pain I'm in. I'm I'm surviving, but barely. And now, mind you, when you're in that kind of pain and you're taking an exam and the clock is ticking and you don't know how to answer the question, talk about like a double-edged sword. So I was dealing with all of that. So I want to laugh about it now, but at the time I'm like, I want to die. So I really don't. But you're in that kind of pain. You just want the pain to go away, right? And I would have done almost anything at that point to let it go. When I got to question 90 or 91, I remember some of the questions I was just like, I just honestly have no idea. And it wasn't because I probably could have figured it out if I wouldn't have had, like, my brain, like the pain signaling was intense to the point where I'm sitting back to try to take the weight or the pressure off of sitting forward. I like to sit forward when I'm doing something. Sitting back to try to take the pressure off of my bladder and try to let the pain subside a little bit so I can focus. It's not working. So at the same point in time, I'm having to read this question, and there was a couple of them I was like, I just don't know. And like I said, I probably could have been like, well, that makes sense. So I just winged it. And then I'm like, we'll go with that one. And at that point I was like, I honestly don't care anymore. I will fail the test and retake it just so I can make the pain go away. That's how bad it hurt. So anyway, I get done with the exam, and now if anybody's ever taken a Cisco exam, in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you're going to have a next. In the lower left-hand corner, you're going to have an end exam. Don't click that. Click the next. When you've completed question 92 or whatever question count you have, when you complete it, click next. Because what's going to end up happening is the next window should be a big circle about the size of, about yay big. It's going to spin, say processing, and then boom, up pops your results. And to my actual shock, I was legit surprised, but also relieved at the exact same time. It says, congratulations, you have passed the exam. I thought I had failed because I didn't think I had answered enough questions correctly to pass. So I passed, but I didn't think I had actually done well enough to do so. So, long story short, that happens, and then I click the next button, and it goes into that, I think, 9 or 10 question survey. My exam is over at this point, right? But I still have everything's still up. I got up and I ran to the restroom. I ran into the restroom. I came back a few minutes later, and I sat down, and up popped the proctor, and said, "Would you please explain to me why you're not behind the webcam?" Like crap. So I tried to explain to him I had to go use the restroom really, really bad, but for whatever reason, I couldn't hit the enter key or send it. Like I couldn't send it. So I'm like, I just quickly went through the survey and then finished and exited it out. And then about an hour and change later, I got an email that my exam score report was available. I logged in just to make sure, and sure enough, it said pass. So, and then the next morning, so Tuesday morning, the 13th, I got an email from CCIE at Cisco.com that said that I had successfully recertified my CCIE. So that was my exam experience, and it was a lot. And like I said, I will probably never go through the on-view version of it again. I'll probably just go to my local school and take it there, just because of the fact that it's going to be easier. Even if I have to drive to Milwaukee and take the exam there, I'll do what I got to do, because that exam experience, they're more strict at home than they are in person. And to me, it's like, okay, well, I would rather have it more strict in person than at home, in my opinion. They need to streamline their operations, and I get that they're trying to maintain the exam integrity and making sure that the area that you're taking the exam is secure and there's nobody in there with you and that you're not cheating and stuff like that. And I completely respect that, and I'm 100% behind it. But what I do think that they need to give a little bit of leeway on, in my opinion, is going to be things like the thing of no talking. I forgot to mention, I was sitting like this for a minute. As I'm reading the questions, I'm just thinking. I got my thinking cap on, and I do this a lot. I was told, please take your hand away from your face. okay. So I couldn't lean forward. I even tried to, I was like, is this better? And so I did this, not even thinking about it. Like, I'm just getting comfortable. Like 10 minutes later, please take your hand away from your face. So I personally wasn't a big fan of that. And, oh, I did this too. You know, you do this once in a while when you're just trying to stay comfortable. Can you please sit back up? Like, they wanted me to look like this the entire time. I don't know why. I could, and you know the little window, the little 1x1 window that you see at the top of your screen when you're taking the exam? I could see me in the video, so I knew they could see me. So, but putting your hand in front of your face, and I was like reading the question, even though the microphone didn't work, my mouth was moving, and I was like, in this scenario, and because I was sometimes when I'm reading something, I can't, like, it doesn't compute, right? I'm reading it, the eyes read it, the brain is seeing the text, but like it doesn't make it past that point where I need to say it out loud so I can hear it, and I'm like, okay, how would that work? And I'm just like, at that point, sometimes you're stuck trying to figure it out or whatever, but it was annoying, and to the point where I'm like, when you're in person, they don't mess with you. You can even, as I've had this happen in the past, where I'm in person at a Pearson VUE testing facility, and I have to go use the restroom. So I will raise my hand, and I'll look over my shoulder, and the proctor will come in. I happen to know them both by name. They'll walk in like, I need to use the restroom. And they're like, okay, cool. Your timer doesn't stop, but you can get up, use the restroom, and come back. Like, we're 100% cool with that. And you empty your pockets, pull up your pant legs, go through the little security procedures, all that type of stuff. You just follow the rules, right? Now, I was nervous about doing that because I don't know the proctor in this situation, and you're dealing with somebody you can't reach out to. So I tend to just bite the bullet, but it is what it is. So I'm probably never going to take a non-VUE exam at home again, and I'll just go in person from this experience. I wasn't really happy with it, but you know what? I know me complaining about it on the YouTube video isn't going to change anything, so I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and deal with it however I decide to move forward with it. But with that being said, overall, I'm happy the exam is over with. I'm happy I passed. So I completely forgot. Cisco CE credits, the continuing education. So I went through and I didn't want to take 2 exams. I didn't want to spend $800 or whatever it is for 2 exams to recertify my CCIE. I did not want to spend that. So I work with people that went through the CE program and nothing but CE. They got enough points and they were able to recertify their CCIEs, all that good stuff. So I was looking through the exam, and let me look through here again. What is the recertification process? Certifications. Recertify. Okay, let me change scenes real quick. Okay, recertification. Where is it? Okay, so this is what I read when I was looking how I could go through the recertification process. So, for CCIE, pass the CCDE written exam, pass any 1 expert level lab practical exam, pass any 3 separate professional concentration exams, pass 1 technology core exam, and pass any 1 professional concentration, right? So, and it says this is also CCNP certification if done in the same track. So, okay, or this is the exam only, right? Or exam and continuing education options. It said earn 120 CE credits, pass 1 technology core exam, and earn 40 CE credits. This is the one that I went for. And to me, this was the better of the 2 for me to go through. So I did that. So there are several CE there's several in the, I'm trying to think what the heck the thing is called, in the catalog of Cisco ce.cisco.com. If you go in there, I didn't painstakingly do this. I had a coworker of mine did it for me. He put together a list. I think he got the list from somebody else. But anyway, he got a hold of a list of all of the different options in the catalog that were free to access. And he went through and he categorized them what they were. And a lot of them were SD access. So I was like, okay. All I need is 40 points. Okay. So, pardon me. I went through and I spent probably 2 or 3 weeks. And I started going through until I learned that you can just take the exam as many times as you want. So I started, for the exam that'll allow you to do that. I started taking the final exam for CE credits, and it took about a week to go through, I think, a dozen of them. But I went through about a dozen of them, and they're all low pointers, 3, 4, 5 points. Before you know it, I got 40 CE points. I had accrued, I think, 42 or 43. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went ahead and I did that, and I was like, all right, bam. Now the only problem was taking the technology core exam. Now let me talk a little bit about that. So the technology core exam, my track is enterprise, right? That's what I have my CCIE in. Well, the problem is I went through that exam blueprint and I was like, man, there's a lot of wireless. There's a lot of DNA center. I'm like, yeah, I don't work with any of those. So I was looking through, I was taking some practice tests, and a lot of questions were around wireless. So I thought to myself, all right, well, I could pony up a couple of weeks and just go through some training on that. And as I started going through the training, you know what ended up happening? I literally fell asleep. I was like, I do not want to learn this. Like, it required for certification. I thought to myself, just suck it up and deal with it. To do a little half-hour chunks, whatever you got to do, just get it done. I was like, oh man. I was like, wireless, I don't want to deal with it. So eventually I got to the point where it was like, you know what? I'm just going to I'll take the SP track. I'll just go take the SPCOR. So I circled my wagons, and I was like, so I started going through SPCOR, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. This is much more routing focused, which is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I should be good. So I spent my time and energy on that. I read up on some DevNet documentation. I read through the automation portion of the Enterprise Official Certification Guide. I did all that, and I was like, okay. So I scheduled the SPCOR exam. I didn't do any labbing for it because I figured, why waste my time on labbing up technologies that I'm already pretty comfortable with? And there were some questions on the exam that were like, oh, I don't know. Would you do it that way? Because I honestly couldn't remember how that actually worked. So that's why I say it's important to stay up to speed as best you can, because, well, if you don't, then you're going to fall behind. So I did that. I did, and fortunately I passed, right? I don't know what I scored. I really don't care. But so what I'm going to be doing here over the next couple of months, and if anybody follows me on Twitter, you saw that I posted that I will be going after some VMware certs. I've actually stood up an entire lab for NSXT. I want to go past the VCIX for it. That's my next big goal. I'm hoping to knock that in sometime in Q1 2023. And then I spend a lot of time with VXLAN, an extraordinarily large amount of time with VXLAN. And so I've done a lot with VXLAN in my day-to-day job. So I was thinking about putting together some training around VXLAN that's more real-world specific. Because there's a lot of best practices training out there, but not a lot of real world. Because not every customer that I've worked with deploys an actual VXLAN fabric the way that it's supposed to be deployed. There are some technology, I've used it as a migration tool, a few times. I've used it as a migration tool that became a full-time solution. I've used it as, which goes to show you that customers will often get something working, and then because it's working and it actually makes their life easier, they keep it in play. Such is life. So I'm planning on doing that. What I want to do is I want to take a lot of the things that I've had to do for both the DCNM, Data Center Network Manager, and Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller. I want to fully roll them out, and I want to get it stood up to where I can walk you guys through full rollouts of everything. And, not necessarily focused on technology specific training, I completely got away from the whole idea of certification based. I focus on a particular technology, and then like right now I'm focusing on NSXT and really enjoying NSXT. I want to learn multi-site federations, the security side, learn the firewalling, all that good stuff. Like I said, I set up an entire lab that I'm working through and all that good stuff because I really like that's another area that I want to get really good at. But then I'm also thinking to myself, okay, what cloud? What is the next big thing that I want to knock out? Do I want another CCNP? Because I'm not going after any more CCIEs. I don't really have. There's really no win for me in that category. So I figured, you know what? I'm good without a CCIE. I thought about I was kicking around the idea that I would go after Service Provider again, but I was also playing around the idea maybe I do CCDE, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not feeling that one right now. But what I do know is that I've got basically 3 years before I have to recertify again. So my goal is to look at products that I work with on a regular basis. Unfortunately, there's not a VXLAN concentration exam, or else I would take that. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to go dive into CCNP Data Center and go take that. And I'm probably also going to look at CCNP Wireless. That's the other one I'm looking at doing. There's not a lot of stuff that you can do in data center that you can do virtually, right? You definitely need hardware to do it. So a lot of it will be reading the exam, the OCG, and then hoping for the best. But it's one of those things where it's like, I really don't know. Because like I said, unless you have the ability of labbing with ACI, you're going to struggle. If you don't have UCS for the B series chassis, you're going to struggle there. If you don't have MDS for storage, if you're doing fiber channel or fiber channel over Ethernet, you might get away with it if you're doing hyperconverged with HyperFlex, stuff like that. But if I go after anything, it's going to be that. But what I'm not doing though is I'm not going through it with the respective just what's the word I want to use? I'm not collecting certifications, right? I want to learn technologies that are going to benefit me, right? And that are going to help me do my job better. So if I learn those, that'll put me in a good spot. I'd love to be able to go and get a UCS B series chassis, plug it in, power it on, fabric interconnects. I'd love to be able to do all that. I have gone through the process of putting it together because I worked with one of my pre-sales guys, and he put together a list of what would be needed for that because he has a data center CCIE, and he put together a lab for it. I looked at that and I was like, I'd like to dive into data center and learn that better. The drawback to it is I don't do anything with UCS. I'm not in the compute or virtualization teams. I'm on the network team, so I deal a lot with VXLAN, networking, data center, that type of stuff, VMware NSX. So for me to, and maybe that changes in the future. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I don't want to collect certifications for the sake of collecting certifications, but at the same point in time, that's gonna there's always I have a target that I want to go obtain, and I have 3 years basically to do that. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I will pick up what do you call it? I will pick up a new exam every so many months, just so that that 3 years is always going to be rolling. So, and it's to keep the recertification process going forward. Now, one thing that I'm looking forward to is my next recertification, because I just hit 7 years with my CCIE back in October. So now that that's done, my goal is over the next, let's say 18 months, roughly, I'm going to go learn data center, learn ACI, and I'm going to go learn the data center platform as a whole. I'm going to go through, take my time going through the training and get that all done. And then that will give me an NP in data center. That'll also push my recertification data out again, because that's a recertification, right? The moment you pass the CCNP and you have certification and you earn a CCNP and you've got a CCIE, it's a recertification of everything. So my goal is to go do that. 18 months or so is probably what I'm going to guess. It could be longer, it could be shorter, I don't know. But what that's going to do is that's going to bump it out. And as of right now, if I don't touch anything recertification until 2025, at the 10-year, that'll put me at the 10-year marker of my IE, which means I would qualify for emeritus status, which means I don't have to keep the CCIE active anymore. I can go emeritus, but I can keep my NP certifications active, and I only have to pass one concentration. But I think there's one. Pass any 40 CE credits or earn 80 CE credits, or take, for professionals, take one technology core or 2 separate professional concentration exams. So that's probably what I would do, is I would just go through and take professional certification or a concentration every 6 months or whatever. Go learn a new technology for 6 months, go take the test, and be done with it. And then this way here, I'm good for a long period of time. And because all of the certifications are 3 years, because my big thing right now is I don't want to be glued to the computer. Like, if anybody's noticed, my my posting rate it's down a lot, and it just, I don't want to say I'm burnt out, but I just don't have the drive to do the recordings like I used to. I did it for a long time, and now it's more like, I picked up skiing, so I go skiing a lot. Get out of the house, do stuff and stuff like that. So my ambitions have changed over time. So I do have requirements for certification to keep them up, which is why I have to spend the time where I need to and stuff like that. But I also don't want to just be a Cisco guy, but that's what I'm known for, is being a Cisco engineer. So I want to dive more into VMware and do NSX and do virtualization as well. But then there's also, I'd like to learn cloud, whether it's Azure or AWS. I'm not exactly sure which direction I would go, but those are other things. But it's keeping the eyeball on what's going on around me and not forgetting where I came from is where it really comes down to it. So I like to not be in front of the computer as much as I can and doing other things. So other hobbies that I've picked up. So, but it's good. It keeps me busy, keeps me on point. I enjoy kind of the way life is going right now and going that direction. So, but that's that balance. And I had to find one, because for a while there I was like, oh man, I'm just burnt out. I just do not want to do what I need to go do. So, but see, being able to identify that was important as well. So, at any rate, I want to thank you guys if you've watched this video to this point. Once I hit the 25-minute mark, I was like, the heck with it. Might as well just go the full time. So, the exam was good. Definitely put in the time and effort that's needed. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'm not going to violate any NDAs, so don't ask me what kind of questions I saw. The more thoroughly you study the material, the better exam experience you're going to have. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me. And until next time, guys, have a good one.